Morning. Morning. There once was a young man named Roland Pye who played the recorder when he wasn't baking bagels. One day he was walking through a park and playing his recorder to rest a while from all his baking when suddenly he spied a corpse lying on the ground beneath a swarm of flies. He put down his recorder, walked over to the corpse, shooed the flies away, and covered the dead man with stones. Returning to his oven later that day, he found that his oven blade had gone on by itself and already baked half the bagels he needed. From that day on, Roland Pye was the happiest baker alive. He would bake until he was tired, then he'd pull his recorder out of his pocket while his oven blade went on by itself. But Roland Pye lived in a town whose mayor did not admire his skill and was jealous of his fame. So the mayor devised a plan to rid the town of Roland. In the beginning he said that Roland was a good worker but lazy. Next he said that Roland baked a whole lot but badly. Then he accused Roland of being a sorcerer, and the people turned on him. Therefore Roland Pye took his recorder and left his home behind. When Roland Pye came to a neighboring town, he went to all the business owners, but none of them would give him any work. Finally, he met an old busker and asked him for work to keep body and mind together. "Come along with me," said the old man, "and we will share alms." So Roland Pye and the old man started going around and singing, "Baker, why do you bear those silent things? Baker, how did you forget to stand where your feet are? Baker, no woman loves your wealth, although it is golden and good for her health. Baker, you are too dirty for a lover to wish to preen. Your limbs are the knots and cords of an old-fashioned machine. Baker, line the rings and bash the boards. You don't need their applause for a thing that is yours. You are a baker and are what you are, not by a miracle, but by the work of your arms. Baker, be who you are." Everybody gave alms to the old man, but to Roland they said, "What is a young man like you out begging? Why don't you work for a living?" "Nobody will hire me," replied Roland Pye. "That's what you say. There's a king with so many hungry soldiers that he'll pay good wages to anyone willing to feed them." So Roland Pye went to the king's kitchen and took the old man whose alms he'd been sharing. The oven had never been used by anyone. Roland mixed the dough, then he rolled it into rings. Then he boiled them, dressed them with seeds, and baked them until they're golden brown. Then he tossed them into a crate to cool down. Whenever Roland wearied of baking, he would play his recorder. And once he was weary of playing his recorder, he would sing, "Baker, why do you bear those silent things? Baker, how did you forget to stand where your feet are? Baker, no woman loves your wealth, although it is golden and good for her health. Baker, you are too dirty for a lover to wish to preen. Your limbs are the knots and cords of an old-fashioned machine. Baker, line the rings and bash the boards. You don't need their applause for a thing that is yours. You are a baker and are what you are, not by a miracle, but by the work of your arms. Baker, be who you are." Hearing the singing, a princess looked out the window. She saw Roland Pye, fell in love with him. But she was a baker, but she was a princess and he a baker. The king would never consent to their marriage. So they decided to run away together. They fled at night in a boat. When they were already on the high seas, Roland remembered the busker. He said to his beloved, "We must fetch the old man. Since he shared his alms with me, we can't go off and leave him like that." At that very moment, the old man came up behind the boat, walking on the water as though it had been dry land. Reaching the boat, he said, We agreed to divide everything we had, and I shared everything I owned. Now you have the king's daughter, and must give half of her to me. At this he gave Roland Pie the knife to cut his bride in half. Roland Pie took the knife with a trembling hand. You are right, he said. You are perfectly right. He was on the point of cutting his bride in two, when suddenly the old man stopped him. Stop! I knew you were a just man. I'm the dead man, mind you, whom you covered with stones. Go now, and may the two of you always be happy. The old man walked away on the waves. The boat came to an island rich in all good things, with a princely palace awaiting the newlyweds. Hamlin towns in Brunswick, my famous Hanover city, the river Weser deep and wide washes its wall on the southern side. A pleasanter spot you never spied, but when begins my ditty, almost 500 years ago. To see the townsfolk suffer so from vermin was a pity. Rats, they fought the dogs and killed the cats and bit the babies in the cradles. They ate the cheeses from the vats and licked the soup from the cook's own ladles. Split open the kegs of salted sprats, made nests in the men's Sunday hats, and even spoiled the women's chats by drowning out their speaking with shrieking and squeaking in 50 different sharps and flats. At last the people in a body to the town hall came flocking. "'Tis clear," cried they, "our mayor is a naughty, and as for our corporation, shocking, to think we buy gowns lined with ermine, for dolce canter won't determine what's best to rid us of our vermin. You hope because you're old and obese to finally for your civic robes ease. Rouse up, sirs, give your brains a racking, to find the remedy we are lacking, for sure as fate will send you packing." At this the mayor and corporation quaked with a mighty consternation. An hour they sat in council. At length the mayor broke silence. "For a guilder I'd my ermine gown sell. I wish I were a mile hence. It's easy to bid one, rack one's brain. I'm sure my poor head aches again. I scratch it so, but all in vain. Oh, for a trap, a trap, a trap." Just as he said this, what should hap? At the chamber door, but a gentle tap. "Bless us," cried the mayor, "what's that?" With the corporation as he sat, looking little through wondrous fat. Nor brighter were his eyes, nor moister, than a too long open oyster. Save when at noon his paunch grew mutinous, for a plate of turtle green and glutinous. Only a scraping of shoes on a mat, anything like the sound of a rat makes my heart go pit-a-pat. "Come in," cried the mayor, looking bigger, and in did come the strangest figure. His long queer coat from heel to head was half yellow and half red, and he himself is tall and thin, with sharp blue eyes each like a pin, and light loose hair and swarthy skin, nor tuft of hair on cheek nor beard on chin, but lips where smile went out and in. There was no guessing his kith or kin, and nobody could enough admire this tall man in his quaint attire. Quoth one, "It's as my great-grandsire, starting up at the trump of doom's tone, had walked this way from his painted tombstone." He advanced towards the council table. "Please, your honor," said he, "I am able, by means of secret charm, to draw all the creatures living beneath the sun, that crawl or swim or fly or run, after me so as you never saw. and I chiefly use my charm on creatures that do people harm. The mole and toad and newt and viper. People call me the Pied Piper. And here they notice round his neck a scarf of red and yellow stripe to match with his coat the self-same check. And at the scarf's end hung a pipe, and his fingers they noticed were ever straying, as if impatient to be playing upon this pipe, as low it dangled over his vesture so old-fangled. Yes, said he, Pied Piper as I am, in Tartary I bred the cam, last June from his huge swarms of gnats. I ease in Asia than I am, of a monstrous brood of vampire bats. And as for what your brain bewilders, if I rid your town of rats, will you give me 1,000 guilders? 50,000 was the exclamation of an astonished American corporation. Into the street, the piper stepped, smiling first a little smile, as if he knew what magic slept in his quiet piped a while. Like a musical adept to blow his pipe, his lips he wrinkled, and green and blue his sharp eyes twinkled, like a candle flame where salt is sprinkled. And ere 3 shrill notes the pipe uttered, he heard as if an army muttered, and a muttering grew to a grumbling, and a grumbling grew to a mighty rumbling, and out of the houses came the rats tumbling, great rats, small rats, lean rats, brawny rats, brown rats, black rats, gray rats, tawny rats, grave old plotters, gay young friskers, fathers, mothers, uncles, cousins, cocking tails and pricking whiskers, families by tens and dozens, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, followed the Pied Piper for their lives, from street to street he piped advancing, and step for step they followed dancing, until they came to the river Weser, wherein all plunged and perished, save one who stout as Julius Caesar, swam across and lived to carry, as he the manuscript he cherished, to Ratland home as commentary. Which was, at first shrill notes of the pipe, I heard a sound as of scraping tripe, and putting apples wondrous ripe into the cider presses bright, and moving away a pickle tub boards, and leaving a jar of conserve cupboards, and drawing the corks of train oil flasks, and breaking hoops of butter casks. It seemed as if a voice sweeter far than my harper by Solery's reed called out, "O rats, rejoice! The world has grown to a vast grey saltery. So munch on, crunch on, take your nunch on, breakfast, supper, dinner, lunch on, and just a bulky sugar punch on, already staved like a great sun shone, gracious scarce an inch before me, just as methought it said come for me, I found the Weser rolling over me. You should have heard the Hamlin people ring the bells, they rock the steeple. Go, cried the mayor, and get long poles, poke out the nests and block up the holes, consult with carpenters and builders, and leave in our town not even a trace of the rats. When suddenly up the face of the piper perked in the marketplace, the first, if you please, my 1,000 guilders. 1,000 guilders. The bear looked blue, so did the corporation too. Counts of dinners made rare havoc with Claret, Moselle, Vintner, Graf Hawk, and half the money would replenish their seller's biggest butt of Rhenish, to pay this sum to a wondering fellow, with gypsy coat of red and yellow. Besides, quoth the mayor with a knowing wink, our business was done at the river's brink. We saw with our eyes the vermin sink, and what's dead can't come to life, I think. So, friend, we're not folks to shrink from our duty of giving you something to drink, and a matter of money to put in your poke. But as for the guilders, what we spoke of them, as you well know, was in joke. Besides, their losses have made us thrifty. 1,000 guilders, come, take 50. The piper's face fell, and he cried, no trifling, I can't wait beside. I promise a visit by dinner time, Baghdad, and accept the prime the head cook's pottage, all he's rich in, for having left in the caliph's kitchen, of a nest of scorpions, no survivor. With him I proved no bargain driver. If you don't think I'll bait a stiver, folks who put me in a passion, they find me pipe after another fashion. How, cried the mayor, do you think I brook being worse treated than a cook, insulted by a ribald, with idle pipe and vesture piebald? Threaten us, fellow, do your worst, blow your pipe there till you burst. Once more he stepped into the street, and to his lips again laid his long pipe of smooth straight cane, and ere he blew 3 notes, such sweet soft notes as yet musicians cunning never gave the enraptured air. There was a rustling that seemed like a bustling, a merry crowd jesting and pitching and hustling. Small feet were pattering, wooden shoes clattering, little hands clapping, little tongues chattering, like foals in the farmyard barley is scattering. Oh, came the children running, all the little boys and girls, with rosy cheeks and flaxen curls, and sparkling eyes and teeth like pearls, tripping and skipping around merrily after the wonderful music with shouting and laughter. The mayor was dumb and the council stood, as if they're changed from blocks of wood, unable to move a step or cry, to the children merrily skipping by, could only follow with an eye the joyous crowd at the piper's back, and how the mayor was on the rack, and the wretched council's bosoms beat, as the pipe returned from the high street, to where the Weser rolled its waters, right in the way of their sons and daughters. How it returned from south to west, and to Copperberg Hill his steps addressed, and after him the children pressed, great was the joy in every breast. He never crossed the mighty top, he's forced to let the piping drop, and we shall see our children stop. When lo, they reached the mountainside, a wondrous portal opened wide, as if a cavern was suddenly hollowed. The piper advanced, and the children followed. When all were in to the very last, the door in the mountainside shut fast. Did I say all? No, one was lame, and could not dance a whole of the way. And then after years, if you blame his sadness, he was used to say, "It's dull in our town since my playmates left. I can't forget that I'm bereft of all the pleasant sights they see, which the piper also promised me. For he led us, he said, to a joyous land, joining the town a jest at hand, where waters gushed and fruit trees grew, and flowers put forth a fairer hue, and everything was strange and new. The sparrow was bright and a peacock here, their dogs outran our fellow deer, and honeybees had lost their stings, and horses were born with eagle's wings. And just as I became assured my lame foot would be speedily cured, the music stopped and I stood still, and found myself outside the hill, left behind against my will, to go now living as before, and never hear of that country more." Alas, alas for Hamelin, there came into many a burgher's pate a text which says at heaven's gate, hopes the rich at his easy rate, as a needle's eye takes a camel in. The mayor sent east, west, north, and south, to offer the piper by word of mouth, wherever it was men's lot to find him, silver and gold to his heart's content, if only he return the way he went, and bring the children behind him. But when they saw it was lost endeavor, and piper and dancers were gone forever, they made a decree that lawyers never should think their records dated duly, if after the day of the month and year these words do not as well appear. And so long after what happened here, on the 22nd of July, 1376, in the better memory to fix the place of the children's last retreat, they called it the Pied Piper Street, where anyone playing pipe or tabor was sure for his future to lose his labor, nor suffered they hostelry or tavern, shocked with mirth the street so solemn, and opposite the place of the cavern, they wrote the story on a column, and on great church window painted, the same to make the world acquainted, how their children were stolen away, and there it stands this very day. And I must not admit to say, that in Transylvania there is a tribe of alien people who ascribe the way and dress of which their neighbors lay such stress, to their fathers and mothers having risen out of some subterranean prison, into which they were Japan, a long time ago in a mighty band, out of Hamlin towns in Brunswick land, but how or why they don't understand. So, Lily, let me and you be wipers of scores out with all men, especially pipers. And if they should pipe us free from rats from mice, if we promise not, let us keep our promise. There was once a rich man who had just one son, and the boy was dearly loved by his father. As everybody knows, the greatest scourge on earth for a rich man is work. Therefore, when his son turned 14, his father decided to send him to school to learn the science of laziness. On the same street as the rich man, there lived a professor, a famous and highly respected professor, who had never done a lick of work in his life he could get out of doing. The rich man called on him and found him stretched out underneath a fig tree. Found him stretched out in the garden underneath a fig tree. With a cushion under his head, a cushion under his back, and a cushion under his buttocks. Before talking to him, I must first see how he does, said the rich man to himself, and he hid behind a hedge to observe the man. The professor lay as still as a corpse, with his eyes closed. The only time he moved was whenever he heard the thud of a ripe fig falling on the ground near where he lay. He would reach slowly out, bring the fruit to his mouth, and swallow it. Then he wouldn't stir again until another fig fell. This is just the professor my son needs, decided the rich man. He came out from his hiding place, introduced himself, and asked the professor if the professor would teach him the science of laziness. Teach his son the science of laziness. Old man, answered the professor, just above a whisper. Don't talk so much. It tires me to listen to you. If you want to bring your son up as you and I are, just send him to me. The rich man went home, took his son by the hand, thrust a feather pillow under his arm, and led him to the garden. He urged him, I urge you, he told him. I urge you, he told him, to do everything this professor of idleness does. I urge you, he told him, to do everything this professor of idleness, to do everything you see this professor of idleness do. The boy, who already had an inclination for that particular science, also stretched out under the fig tree. Observing his teacher, he saw him reach for every fig that fell and bring it to his mouth. Why should I work myself to death reaching for figs, he thought. And he opened his mouth wide open. He lay there with his mouth wide open. Soon a fig fell into his mouth. Soon a fig fell into his mouth. And he let it go down slowly. Then he reopened his mouth. Another fig fell. This time it missed his mouth. He lay there perfectly still and murmured, "Why so wide of the mark? Fig fall into my mouth." Seeing how wise his pupil was already, the professor said, "Go on now. You have nothing to learn from me. You can even teach me something." So the boy went home to his father, who thanked heaven for having given him such a smart son. My first thought was he lied in every word, that hoary cripple with malicious eye, askance to watch the working of his lie on mine, and most scarce able to afford suppression of the glee that pursed and scored its edge at one more victim gained thereby. What else should he be set for with his staff? What save the wailing of lies is there? All travelers who might find him posted there, and ask the road. I guessed what skull-like laugh would break, what crutch can write my epitaph for pastime in the dusty thoroughfare. If at his counsel I should turn aside into ominous track which all agree hides the dark tower, yet acquiescingly I did turn as he pointed, neither pride nor hope rekindling at the end descried, so much as gladness some end might be. For what with my whole world wide wondering, what with my search drawn out through years, my hope dwindled into a ghost not fit to cope with that obstreperous joy success would bring. I hardly tried now to rebuke the spring my heart made, finding failure in its scope. As a sick man very near to death seems dead indeed, and feels begin and end the tears, and takes farewell of each friend, and hears one bid the other go, draw breath freely outside, since all is over, he saith, and the blow fallen no grieving can amend. While some discuss if near the graves be room enough for this, and when a day suits best for carrying the corpse away, with careboat banners, scarfs, and staves, and still the man hears all and only craves, he may not shame such tender love and stay. Thus I had for so long suffered in this quest, heard failure prophesied so oft being writ, so many times among the band to wit, the knights who to dark towers search address their steps, that just to fail as they seem best, and all doubt was now should I be fit. So quiet as despair I turned from him, the hateful cripple, out of his highway into the path he pointed. All the day had been a dreary one at best, and dim was settling into its close, yet shot one grim red leer to see the plain catch its astray. For mark, no sooner was I fairly found, pledged the plain after a pace or two, then pausing throw backward a last few, over the safe road 'twas gone, great plain all round, nothing but plain to the horizon's bound. I must go on, naught else remained to do. So on I went. I think I never saw such starved ignoble nature. Nothing throve, for flowers as well expect a cedar grove, but chortled and spurred according to their law, might propagate their kind with none to awe. You think a bird being a treasure trove. No penry inertness in grimace in some strange sort were the land's portion. See or close your eyes, and said nature peevishly, and nothing skills. I can't help my case. 'Tis God's judgment's fire must cure this place. Count on its clods and set my prisoners free. If there pushed me ragged, it's a stalk above its mates, its head was chalk. The The bents were jealous elves, who made holes and rents in the dock's harsh sword leaves. Bruised and bog holes were grievous. His a brute must walk, passion their life over boots and tents. As for the grass that grew as scarce as hair in leprosy, thin dry blades pricked the mud which underneath them beaded up with blood. One stiff blind horse, his every bone a stare, stood stupefied however he came there, thrust no past service from the devil's stud. Alive, he might be dead for aught I know, with red gaunt and callous neck astrain, and shut eyes beneath the rusty mane. Seldom went such grotesqueness with such woe. I never saw a brute I hated so. He must have been wicked to deserve such pain. I shut my eyes and turned them on my heart, as a man called for wine before he fights. I asked one draft of earlier, happier sight. Ere fitly I can hope to play the part. Think first, fight afterward, as a soldier's art. One case of old times, that's all to rights. Not it. I fancied Cuthbert's reddening face, beneath its garniture of curly gold. Dear fellow, till I almost felt him fold. An arm in mine fixed me to that place, that way he used. Alas, one night's disgrace, how went my heart's new fighter and left it cold. Giles then, the soul of honor, there he stands, frank as 10 years ago when knighted first. An honest man should dare who said he durst. Good, but the scene shifts. Thaw what hangman's hand pinned to his breast of parchment. His old band reads it, poor traitor, spit upon and cursed. Better this present go to pass like that, back there forged by darkening path. No sound the sight as far as the eye can strain. Will the night send a howl at our bat, I ask, when something on the dismal flat came to arrest my thoughts and change their train. A sudden old river crossed my path, as unexpected as a serpent came. No tides congenial to the boom. This as it frothed by might have been a bath of the fiend flowing to see the raft of its black eddies be spat with flakes and spoons. So petty yet so spiteful, all along low scrubby alders kneeled over it. Drenched willows flung them headlong in a fit of rout despair. A suicidal throng, the river which had done them all the wrong, whatever that was, rolled by, deterred no whit. Which while I forded, good saints how I feared to set my foot upon a dead man's cheek. Each step or feel the spear I thrust to seek for hollows tangled in his hair and beard. It may have been a water rat I feared, but of it sounded like a baby's shriek. Glad was I to reach other bank, now for a better country. Vain presage, who were the strugglers? What war did they wage? Whose savage trampled to dust pad the dank soil to a plash? Toads in a poison tank, or wild cats in a red-hot rage. The fight must so have seemed in that foul cirque. What penned them there with all the plain to choose? No footsteps leading to that horrid muse. None out of it. Mad Druids set to work their brains, no doubt, like galley slaves a Turk pits for his pastime Christians against Jews. More than that, a furlong on, why there, what bad use was that engine for, that wheel? Or break not wheel, that arrow fit the wheel men's bodies out like silk, with all the air of Coffin's tool. On earth left unaware, abroad to sharpen its rusty teeth of steel. Then came some stuff down once a wood, next to marsh it would seem, now mere earth. Desperate and done with, so the fool finds mirth, makes a thing and mars it, till his mood changes and off he goes, within a rude bog playing marsh, sand and stark black dearth. Now blotches rankling colored gay and grim, now patches where some meanness of the soils broke into moss or substances like oils. Then came a palsy, cleft in him, a distorted mouth that splits its rim, gaping at death and dies while it recoils. As far as ever from the end, not in the distance, heed me not, point my footsteps further at the thought. Great black bird, Apollyon's bosom's friend, sailed past Norita's wide wings dragon pen. Then rushed my cat, perchance the guide I sought. For looking up where I somehow grew, the plain had given place all round of mountains with such names to grace mere heights and heaps now stolen in view. How thus they surprised me, saw the view. How to get from there was no clear case. Yet have I seemed to recognize some trick of mischief had happened to me. God knows when, in a bad dream perhaps, here ended then progress this way, when in the very nick of giving up one more time came a click as when the trap shuts you're in the den. Burningly it came upon me all at once. This was the place, those two hills crouched like two bulls on corn and fight, while to the left a tall scout, Dunn's daughter was dozing at the very nuns after a lifetime of training for the sight. One in the midst lay but the tower itself, the round squat turret, built of brown stone without a counterpart in the whole world. The tempest mocking out points the ship and thus the unseen shelf. He strikes on only when timbers start. Not seen, because of night perhaps, why day came back for that. Behind it left the dying sunset, kindled to a cleft, the hills like two giants in hunting lay, chin upon hand to see the game at bay, and thus stab and end the creature to the heft. Not here, when noise was everywhere it told, increasing like a bell, names in my ears, of lost adventurers, my peers, how such was strong and such was bold, and such was fortunate, yet each of old, lost, one moment knelt the woe of years. There they stood, ranged along the hillside men, to view the last of me, a living frame, for one more picture in a sheet of flame. I saw them and knew them all, and yet, gone was the sun born to my lips, I said, the blue child Roland to a dark tower came.